Welcome to another bonus edition of the MTB podcast, a segment of the weekly episode that I call Afterthoughts. This is my favorite part of these weekly presentations because it gives me a chance to dig a little deeper into something that came up during the main episode. But it's not always just about digging into what's really going on beneath the surface of these ancient stories. It's also about digging beneath the surface of our lives, too. This week's theme was all about the very human longing for comfort, safety, and support. And if you were with us for the main episode, you know we looked at how that desire gets mythologized in stories about shepherds, flocks, heavenly promises, and heroic messengers. But now I want to zoom out a little and ask a bigger question. Not just about belief, but about belonging. Because what if the real draw of religion, especially in times like these, isn't the theology or the miracles or even the idea of heaven? What if the real draw of religion is just not feeling alone? What if the thing people are actually craving most is community? A place where they're seen, where they're accepted, a place where someone saves them a seat at the table, even if the table does come with a side of dogma. That's the premise we're working from today, that what draws people to religion, especially in this weird cultural moment where belief is fading but religious attendance is rising a bit. What draws them to religion isn't so much faith in God, but faith that someone will be there for them. So that leads to a few honest questions. Why do religious spaces, especially the ones rooted in rigid belief, still feel so magnetic for so many people? What's the secret sauce behind sacred rituals and symbols? And if people are leaving institutional religion but still craving ritual and community, is there a better way to meet that need? Let's dig into that. All right, let's start with a simple truth that's basically baked into our biology. We are social creatures. I mean, sure, some of us are introverts and need serious alone time to recharge. I seem to be guilty of that these days. But even the most solitude-loving among us still need connection. Evolutionarily speaking, our ancestors survived not by going it alone. Rugged individuals quickly became dead individuals. They did it by sticking together. Tribes, clans, villages, whatever you call them, those groups weren't just helpful, they were essential. And if you didn't belong, you didn't survive. Fast forward a few thousand years, and we're not huddling together around campfires to fend off wild animals anymore. But that longing to belong, still there, still strong. In fact, in some ways, it might be stronger now because the structures that used to support it, extended families, close-knit neighborhoods, actual conversations with people who aren't bots on the internet, those things are breaking down. And here's where it gets maybe a little weird. America loves to celebrate rugged individualism. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Be your own boss. Blaze your own trail. And yet, we're lonely as hell. Rates of depression, anxiety, and social disconnection are through the roof. People are working longer hours. They're moving more often. And they're relying on digital relationships to meet emotional needs that were just never meant to be downloaded or streamed. So here's the paradox. In a culture that rewards independence, people are starved for community. And where do they often turn? Religion. They turn to churches. Because say what you will about organized religion, and believe me, I've said a lot here, they're really good at creating the feeling of belonging. You walk in, someone greets you. You get a bulletin. You sit in the same pew week after week, near many of the same smiling people. You share rituals. You sing with people. You shake hands. You're told you matter because you're part of the body of Christ or the flock or the family of God or whatever group metaphor is used. There's structure. Yeah, there are in-groups, but you know where you fit. And that validation through participation, oh, that's addictive. You show up and someone's happy to see you. You serve in a ministry and they thank you for it. You tithe and you're told you're supporting something that's so much bigger than yourself. Even if you don't believe every line of the creed, the experience of belonging can be just very deeply meaningful for people. And quite often, that's enough to keep people coming back. So here's the question I think that we have to ask. Can we meet that need without all the dogma, without needing a supernatural backstory? Is there a way to do all of that without demanding a belief in the unprovable divine? So let's talk about belief, not as a starting point, but as something that comes after the thing people are really looking for. Because for a lot of folks, the draw to church isn't, wow, I've concluded that the universe must be ruled by an invisible sky deity who demands blood sacrifice and weekly songs. It's more like, I want to believe that someone's got my back when life gets hard, and these people seem to believe that, so maybe I will too. That's why so many people want to believe in God. Not necessarily because it's the most reasonable explanation, but because it's the most comforting one. The idea of God as protector, as comforter, as cosmic parent, that's powerful. It speaks to deep emotional needs, especially when the world just feels so overwhelming and unpredictable and full of disappointment. For a lot of folks, belief isn't something they reasoned their way into. It's something they absorbed from the community that welcomed them. And here's where it gets a little tricky. Once belonging is tied to belief, they'll often just go along with whatever doctrine is required just to stay included. You're sitting in the pew surrounded by kind people who made you casserole after your surgery and invited you to their kid's birthday party, and the preacher is going on something about eternal damnation for those who don't believe. You might be thinking, oh, yikes, this is kind of harsh, but you nod along anyway, because rocking the boat might mean losing the connection, losing that community. And when that dynamic sets in, when belief becomes a social passport, you've got a recipe for trouble. Because now people are emotionally invested in belonging, and the belief system that comes with it just gets a free pass. This is exactly how otherwise kind, thoughtful people end up endorsing exclusionary dogma. Not because they're fanatics, not because they've read the Bible cover to cover, because most of them haven't, but because the cost of questioning is just too high. It's not that these folks are weak or gullible. It's that the need to belong is stronger than their doubts. And if the community requires belief to maintain connection, a lot of folks will quietly put their questions on a shelf and just keep showing up. That's actually a very normal human thing to do. But it's also why we have to be really careful about how we build community and what we ask people to accept in exchange for a seat at the table. Now let's talk about rituals. Not the Eye of Newt kind, unless that's your thing, no judgment here, but the kind that's everywhere. Lighting candles, breaking bread, singing together, standing in silence. You don't have to believe in anything supernatural to feel something powerful when you're in a room full of people holding candles and singing the same solemn-sounding words together. That's the beauty of ritual. It reaches us through the senses, through rhythm, through repetition. It grounds us in a moment. And that is magical. Religion tends to do rituals really well. Baptisms, weddings, funerals, holiday celebrations. These aren't just ceremonies, they're symbolic anchors in our lives. They help us mark transitions. They help us express identity and reconnect with something that feels so much bigger than ourselves, even if that something bigger is just the collective heartbeat of the people in the room. Secular spaces don't always offer that. We get birthday parties and graduation speeches, but not a lot of regular shared rituals that help us feel like we belong to something meaningful. And symbols. Whew, don't even get me started on symbols, whether it's a cross, a star, a fish, a flag, or a pride pin. Symbols matter because they carry emotion. They tap into our emotions. They're a shortcut to our emotions. They say, this is who I am, or this is what I believe, or even, you're safe here. The act of lighting a candle, repeating a phrase, or sharing a meal doesn't require belief. It invites connection. That's the power of ritual when it's done with intention. It brings people together in a way that words alone can't. People today aren't just hungry for answers. I think they're hungry for experience, for meaning that's felt, not just spoken. That's why someone might sit through a sermon they don't fully agree with just to stand in a circle at the end and sing something familiar. It's why we cry at weddings and funerals even when we don't share the theology. Because ritual, real, honest, heartfelt ritual, makes life feel sacred. Not because it invokes the divine, but because it honors our shared humanity. So maybe the goal isn't to throw out ritual. Maybe the goal is to reimagine it. What does it look like to create secular rituals that feel just as rich and grounding? What symbols could we lift up that say, this is who we are, without excluding anyone else? If we're going to build new kinds of community, we don't have to start from scratch. We just have to bring the magic back down to earth. So here's the big question. If belief isn't required, how do we still create spaces where people feel like they belong, where they feel seen, safe, supported, maybe even a little inspired? The truth is, we don't need supernatural claims to make that happen. What we do need is intentionality. We need to care enough to build connection on purpose. And that's what my ultimate vision for the Coda Project is all about. Instead of doctrine, we build on shared values. Instead of sermons, we share stories. Instead of waiting for a higher power to intervene, we just show up for each other. Imagine small, values-based circles, what we might call gatherings, where people check in with one another, reflect on the week, maybe share a meal or organize something meaningful together, like a local service project, or even do a gratitude ritual. Nothing has to be fancy. It just has to be real. Now, when I've floated these ideas before, I often get the same reaction from people. Oh, that sounds nice, but it would be kind of weird. And I get it. It's new, but let's be honest. Have you ever really looked around at a typical church service? You got smoke and chanting, a guy in elaborate robes speaking in metaphor while people kneel, stand, and then sing on cue. That's not weird. Come on now. Compared to that, lighting a candle and taking turns naming something we're grateful for is downright boring. Okay, it's not weird. And yet, it's far more personal. And it can be far more healing if we do it with intention. And here's the thing. We don't need temples to build sacred space. What we need is people willing to show up, willing to make meaning together, willing to create new traditions that reflect the world we want to live in. The magic isn't in the ritual itself, it's in the connection that the ritual helps create. If we root that connection in values like respect, empathy, and mutual care, we're already on sacred ground. So if you've ever felt like you didn't quite fit into traditional religion, but you still longed for belonging, for rhythm and meaning in your life, you're not alone. And you're also not out of options. We can build something new, something better, something more human. We just have to start. Let's be honest. Most people aren't going back to church because they suddenly found God hiding in a pew. They're going back because they're lonely, because they're looking for connection, for some sort of consistency, and definitely for community. In a world that often feels chaotic and disconnected these days, religion offers something stable, even if it comes wrapped in mythology and dogma. Most of these religions have been doing it for thousands of years. They've had a long time to figure it out. But what people are really finding, it's not divine intervention. They're finding each other. And that's actually good news, because if what people are longing for is belonging, then we can build that without gatekeepers, without pulpits, and without having to pretend to believe things we don't. We can reclaim community as a human right, not some religious privilege. We can create spaces where the only requirement for being welcomed is showing up with an open mind and an open heart. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. The world doesn't need more dogma. It doesn't need more institutions telling people who's in and who's out. What it needs, what we need, is more tables, more shared meals, more moments of real connection where everyone, truly everyone, is welcome. And the best part? You don't need permission to start setting the table. All right, thanks for joining me for this episode of Afterthoughts. If you want to keep up on everything I'm doing, please head over to thecodaproject.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get notifications whenever I publish anything, and I'll also keep you updated on the weekly live streams of mythologizing the Bible. Also, if you subscribe for free over at thecodaproject.com, you'll start receiving my weekly resource called The Weekly Compass. It's a brief, once-a-week guide on a single core value. Think of it as a mini lesson plan for personal growth. It's perfect for families, students, and adults because I include discussion questions designed for each age group. Each weekly issue centers on a short reflection about the week's value, followed by discussion questions that are tailored for different age groups, from kids to college students to adults, and then a simple take action step, like a small challenge or exercise you can do to put that value into practice. Especially for families or small groups that are starting to gather together, it's designed to be an easy way to ensure that at least once a week you're making time to talk about morality, ethics, and core values. So if you're interested, please go subscribe for free at thecodaproject.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth.